Mr. President, it's a pleasure to address the Council at the beginning of this important year for peace in Colombia. Es también un honor muy particular, un honor especial estar aquí en presencia de la vicepresidenta Francia Márquez, la vicepresidenta hoy, pero una constructora de paz históricamente en Colombia. También un saludo muy especial al canciller Álvaro Leiva, también una persona histórica en la paz del país. Y quiero aprovechar esta oportunidad para agradecerles la confianza y el apoyo brindado por el Gobierno de Colombia a la Misión de Verificación de la ONU y en general a todo el sistema de Naciones Unidas. Quiero expresar una vez más mi solidaridad y reiterar mi condena absoluta al intento de atentado contra la vicepresidenta reportado el día de ayer. También me complace que en la sesión de hoy participe el señor Armando Guaidiyú Balbuena, destacado líder indígena y secretario de la instancia de alto nivel de pueblos étnicos, creado por el Acuerdo de Paz, quien trabaja día con día para promover los derechos de las comunidades étnicas en todo el país. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, the developments described in the most recent report of the Secretary General on Colombia speak of the potential of the year ahead for the consolidation of peace in Colombia. I am confident that with the commitment of the parties, 2023 can bring decisive progress to deliver much-needed security and development opportunities for communities in conflict-affected regions. Just a week ago, President Petro and Vice President Márquez traveled to Chocó, one of the most neglected regions of the country, to sign the law which enacted the Ministry of Equality. This is an exciting development for Colombia. This new institution, under the leadership of the Vice President, seeks to address deep inequalities affecting especially women, indigenous, and Afro-Colombian peoples. It can be certainly an important instrument for advancing the goals of the peace agreement by helping to bridge disparities within Colombian society. Mr. President, in his report, the Secretary General welcomed the government's recent actions to move forward in some of the areas of the agreement with the greatest transformative potential. I echo his praise for steps taken in the last few months regarding the comprehensive rural reform, such as the agreement on purchase of land and the increase in the budgets for agriculture. Further momentum in rural reform issues was seen in the convening by the authorities of the first National Convention of Peasants, which I attended last December. In that convention, representatives of peasant communities shared testimonies and came forward with many proposals for deepening the implementation of elements of the agreement's comprehensive rural reform, reaffirming once again their key role in peace building. Rural reform is now and finally clearly moving to the center of efforts to build a more peaceful and prosperous Colombia. As the Secretary General has reiterated, constructive dialogue between the parties, as well as between the government and civil society, is of the essence. And I am very encouraged by the positive environment that has characterized the past few months within the Commission for the follow-up, promotion, and verification of the implementation of the final agreement, as well as in other fora created by the agreement, and I trust that this spirit will shortly translate into joint actions to overcome pressing challenges so as to move forward decisively. This year is also key to advance outstanding legislation to implement the peace agreement. victims' representatives in Congress, as well as members of political parties from across the spectrum, will all have a fundamental role to play. Señor Presidente y distinguidos miembros del Consejo, el éxito del proceso de reincorporación es parte esencial de la construcción de una paz estable y duradera, como lo previeron tanto el Gobierno como las antiguas FARC-EP en el Acuerdo Final de Paz. En este sentido, saludo el reciente nombramiento de Alejandra Miller, una excomisionada de la verdad y además una defensora de los derechos de las mujeres, como nueva directora de la Agencia para la Reincorporación, que es una entidad clave para asegurar este éxito. Su énfasis en integrar en la reincorporación los enfoques de género y étnico es sumamente alentador. Asimismo, la reciente extensión hasta el 30 de junio de la renta básica, que garantiza el acceso para miles de excombatientes a un ingreso básico mensual, es una medida muy positiva, mientras las partes continúan trabajando de manera conjunta en la adopción de medidas de mediano y largo plazo para asegurar la sostenibilidad de la reincorporación. Para este fin, sigue siendo fundamental garantizar los recursos necesarios para brindar apoyo a los miles de hombres y mujeres excombatientes que continúan comprometidos y comprometidas con su transición a la vida civil a pesar de enormes retos y amenazas. Presidente y distinguidos miembros del Consejo, es lamentable que a más de 6 años desde la firma del acuerdo, la violencia continúe contra las comunidades, líderes y lideresas sociales y antiguos miembros de las FARC-EP. En las últimas semanas han ocurrido numerosos hechos de violencia, especialmente en zonas priorizadas para la implementación del acuerdo. Es de especial preocupación la continuidad de la violencia ejercida contra líderes y comunidades indígenas como los Aguá y afrocolombianas como el Consejo Comunitario de Alto Mira y Frontera, ambos en el departamento de Nariño, donde la implementación de disposiciones étnicas del acuerdo final resulta un imperativo. A medida que el Gobierno da pasos audaces para disminuir la violencia en el marco de su política de paz total e implementa un nuevo enfoque de seguridad humana, se hace también necesaria la implementación coordinada de las disposiciones del acuerdo sobre garantías de seguridad. Confío en que los pasos dados recientemente por la Comisión Nacional de Garantías de Seguridad permitan avanzar hacia este objetivo. Presidente, miembros del Consejo, son alentadores los avances del Sistema Integral de Verdad, Justicia, Reparación y No Repetición, uno de los ejes fundamentales del acuerdo y uno de sus aspectos más innovadores. La emisión por parte de la Jurisdicción Especial para la Paz, Jefe, de sus primeras resoluciones de conclusiones es un paso decisivo hacia las primeras sanciones que podrían ser emitidas este año. Y como lo señaló el Secretario General, las recomendaciones incluidas en estas resoluciones, construidas en un proceso dialógico en el que participaron víctimas y comparecientes, ilustran de manera clara que la paz y la justicia pueden y deben reforzarse mutuamente. La misión continuará apoyando a la JEP y a entidades del Gobierno a medida que se preparan para asegurar las condiciones para la implementación de estas sanciones. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Council, while pressing forward with the implementation of the final peace agreement, government engagement with illegal armed actors has continued in the framework of the Total Peace Policy. Last month, the government and the National Liberation Army, ELN, concluded the first round of peace dialogues in Venezuela amid a constructive environment. They plan to hold a new round in Mexico in the coming weeks. The parties' decision to to reinitiate discussions is widely supported in Colombian society and is valued, especially by communities affected by the conflict in several regions. At the request of the two parties, the Secretary General has agreed to permanently accompany their dialogue process through my presence at the talks. I have been carrying out that role as part of a supporting group that includes the guarantor and accompanying countries and the Catholic Church. The parties have also decided to share with the Security Council documents agreed at the negotiating table. I will ensure that the first of such documents focus on the rules and architecture of the negotiating process reaches the Council through the Secretariat. Mr. President and members of the Council, the new year began with a hopeful announcement by the President of 6-month ceasefires with several illegal armed actors operating in various areas across the country. The Secretary General has welcomed this announcement, and if carefully designed and carried out with commitment, de-escalation measures agreed with armed groups can help to significantly reduce violence and suffering of conflict-affected communities while building trust in ongoing dialogues. There is a fundamental reality that has to be acknowledged. The lasting success of the Colombian peace agreement, which we all wish to see, is contingent on the ability of the Colombian authorities to address the persistent violence that poses its greatest threat. The government is making an admirable effort to do so, in part through differentiated dialogues with illegal armed groups aimed at ending the violence. If these dialogues are successful, this would greatly contribute to generate the security conditions necessary for the different provisions of the final agreement to materialize. The effective implementation of the agreement in itself would bring about the transformations required for lasting peace to take root. Mr. President and members of the Council's decisions today to authorize the expansion of the mission's mandate to include the agreement's comprehensive rural reform and the ethnic chapter in its verification task will enable the mission to increase its contribution to peace in Colombia. I am very grateful for your trust and that of the parties. There are plentiful of opportunities ahead for peace building in Colombia. The role of the United Nations and the solid support of this Council remain as important as ever. I take this opportunity to express my gratitude to the hundreds of men and women within the mission and the country team, whose day-to-day work is a clear reflection of this commitment. I thank you.